How do you write a book? One method when you can't really start, but you have a lot of notes, is the collage method. How does it work? You pick a note in any given notebook that you'd like to summarize, and you just put it at the head of the section. You consider it a picture at an exhibition. You let that original thought be the cause to which you respond. Your interpretation as the effect, so to speak. And then you can overcome the blank page by pre-populating it with results of previous efforts or just previous reception of thoughts, spontaneous notes, for example, in your notebook. Here's an example. Section 1, pictures at an exhibition. The note just says this: can quote notes in typewriter font in a box as an exhibition in the History Museum. The easy way out is better than no way at all. The easy way out, that is. Choose a very barbaric, basic method of just getting into the motion of writing, not so much worrying about the final result. Just start building. Don't so much worry about the blueprint. Don't worry about limiting the length as well of the book that you write. Maybe you could do that later and extract the key talking points. The easy way out is better than no way at all. Just pick notes and say as much as you can about them, their origin, and also meaning. I take issue with this now. Just pick notes and say as much as you can about them. Maybe think a little bit and respond in the most efficient way possible, which I think we can do, by the way, now that we have interrogative criticism and also numerical analysis. In plain English, we're considering the interrogative genera of the nouns that we bandy about and invoke, like art and beauty, wealth, decision, and so on. And we're also considering whether we're invoking concepts besides God singularly, as though perhaps being atheists, we're nonetheless eager to placate the monotheistic tradition. In Freudian terms, we want some substitute gratification for worship of God, so we say things like evolution, which is art, beauty. We're really serious and super offended when our thoughts or complete sentences involving these concepts are disagreed with by others, whether academics, critics, or... So don't say as much as you can. Say just enough, I would say. But the next part, say as much as you can, their origin and also meaning. So that's actually two things. So it's two definite things: the origin of the note and its meaning, and as much as you can. So some nebulous third, in addition to a more finely chiseled out two. The origin of the note, how to explain that? Perhaps you were at a train station when you noticed something and a thought occurred to you, not necessarily connected to the place and time of day. So that's the occasion. It's a kind of cause that, like a catalyst, lets the chemical reaction take place. Like a match put to a pile of gunpowder and it explodes, but you already had the gunpowder. So as though you were waiting for the occasion, just noticing that thing, and the sound of the spoon or the glass in the cafe on a Sunday, for example, after brunch. And also their meaning. What is meaning? I guess what a thought portends what actions you should take in conformity with the principle, if it is one, or for a word as definition. But a definition is what it is, but there are other interrogative aspects. It's genus or its number, but also gender in the Romance languages. Fine. Redundancy between explanations is fine. Is it? The sentence says, no, it's not, but achieving the motion of writing, just actually writing as opposed to not writing and just planning is more important. So what? Relax application of principles or laws, simply put, that have to be in effect when you write. The criteria of judgment, whether an artwork is art at all or is beautiful, may not actually have to be in play during the writing. Because those principles or laws judge the finished thing, not the actual making, the beginning and the middle. They only really pertain to the end. Also, in an exhibition can show a series of notes. So somehow a thematically random sampling of thoughts will somehow contribute to some whole for an eon of your mental history. But is it acceptable to never really achieve conceptual clarity? I don't know. If you do this method, in other words, it will put you in this collage method. You quote yourself, then you interpret. You play the artist, and then you relax into the critic. It's a very easy way to get started. You can bootstrap the writing of a work. Or is it not easier to continue a work already started than it is to start? However, you concede too much to the biological order of things. This model of creation is overly chronological. Raw, naked time might not present the best order of individual thoughts, if it even gives us the individuals at all. Two different notes may talk about the same idea, just as in multiple languages, different words are said for the concept circle. But they're all essentially the same once you have the clear and distinct idea. So you're going to encounter the same problem if you just take the notes in chronological order of the notebook. That's not the most effective order of presentation. But if you were to think too much about that, you might not achieve the hideous self-portrait that nonetheless lets you see who you are or who you were, ugly, hideous, and so on. But it's important to overcome that hunchbacked individual, that wannabe prophet, and maybe to be worse, better, but at least different, to move forward. And by doing this, you can prove your point about the notebook. And I think the point of the notebook is just that you really develop a philosophy through conversation with yourself and through interaction with the community. Maybe that argument would hold true if you're in a community that, I don't know, if there's not much accord between the ideas in circulation of your geographic community where you reside, but not where you truly are, then maybe you do need to secede. Alternatively, go somewhere else. Hard to say. So now I have my buoys. Buoys, these are things in the ocean. If you're at the beach, you might see a line of buoys connected by rope to protect swimmers from swimming too far out, where they might have problems, the high tide, drown. Just need to swim between them. So you don't need to swim too much, because swimming is the hard part, but being on at a buoy or on an island, that's the easy part. You're on dry land, tweaking the metaphor slightly. In fact, could use this very note as the beginning. So a kind of self-reference, which was a big theme in this book as well, that somehow a mental process with the capacity for self-reference exceeds what's available to mere mechanical or mathematical computation that can't really approximate this power of sentient beings. But why defend the distinction between man and machine? Why not just make the machines that let you become a better man or a Superman? Whether there's a hard and whether there's a thick barrier, a definite boundary between man and machine, it just doesn't really matter to me anymore. Besides the fact that machines are just considered monadically or monolithically, like every computing device just falls into that category, and every being who speaks without thinking, that's simply man or humankind. But we're not making distinctions between types of humanity that are, that were, and that might exist, and so on. Now, why do I backtrack from a longer video on section 12, art that's not art? And I go back to pictures at an exhibition introducing this collage method of writing. Problem: can't start, but can't start your official work. You're having trouble with that. You don't feel like writing an outline because somehow reducing your ideas to an outline, lining them up side by side, that's some kind of mistreatment of the original inspiration. You don't want to write an outline. In other words, you don't want to take the time, and it's somehow offensive to you to further paraphrase the ideas. The ideas have to be presented in the original form as though an angel had whispered them into your ear. So you want to capture them as they were given to you. You don't want to claim original revelation. After all, various traditions, man cannot legislate. The laws come from the gods. So what you hear in a spontaneous mode, that ought not be altered or subject to any, well, it can be interpreted, but the interpretation then is, of course, separate. That helps you get started. It's a way of writing. And it's also art that's not art in the sense that it's ugly, but it gets you started and create. Art is about creating, right? As a process, as an action, art making. You're going to produce a very long manuscript. It's going to be voluminous, take up a lot of space. So anyway, producing a manuscript by collage method, it's an example of art that's not art. You want to create art, but you're going to have to offend your sacred sense of art. Either relax your standards, deprecate them, or discover a new one that the transformation of self is so beneficial that it justifies making a horrendous work that can even be thrown out at the end, a kind of throwaway thought. The whole manuscript is a throwaway manuscript that it was a vehicle that could just melt away completely and fall apart, be scrap metal once you reach your destination. Why do we care, however, now about art that's not art? Aside from the origin in this collage method, which I think was maybe the third method of writing that I came across in order to bootstrap the writing of a book, why today do we still care about a seemingly meaningless contradiction, art that's not art? Because this kind of self-alienation has to do with the number of a concept. Clearly, if I can have an art that's not art, or that's not what art essentially was, note the strong link between essence and was, Vazen, perhaps. Note that strong link. Then the concept has to be made plural. That is, these events change the data structure of the concept, the graph of relations between the subclasses of the concept, the different kinds, even if the writer denies that a subclass of art is art at all. These denials are just special subcategories after all. And doing this kind of analysis helps you spot subtle, persistent sympathy with the monotheistic tradition, that you're taking concepts, even if you're making this plural, but you still want to call out art as something singular, you're still participating unknowingly in monotheism. You're taking concepts to be singular that aren't God, even though you said you were a consistent atheist, so that you're bleeding power by not realizing what you do. So I would say that you could just say, hey, I can't escape from this compulsion to invoke some concept singularly because it feels so good to me. So it has to just be art or beauty or justice. I don't know. But I would say just go back to monotheism, but say that monads besides God are idols, and you reject idolatry, or just go even more radically atheist. Don't just be an anti-monotheist, be an anti-monist completely, unless you can demonstrate that the monad, the concept you're saying singularly, like science, for example, without they or it's still singular by nature, or at least has a very heavyweight main member besides branches like physics, chemistry. So it's mono, even as it's poly, hybrid, talking about the data structure. Anyway, I would say that be even more strongly atheist, such that you distrust the former foundations of atheism itself. You have to discover it as a rejection of all monism whatsoever, whether it's the cosmos or some holy singular order or whatever, or justice. That behavior has to tend towards this one kind of act that is in accord with some system of law, for example. There are all these possibilities, but anyway, diagnose persistence of monotheism. So art that's not art, it has to do with transformation of concepts, sets, and numerical analysis. And also note that it's a formula, X and X that's not X, or X that's not X. It's just a kind of linguistic function that may be repeated in the title. All is not all, which I previously said actually suggests an interrogative reformation of first concept. and which is what Aristotle was just calling substance. Whether substance is a concept or an individual, it's what he was searching for within the whatful plane. So he talks about essence or substance and accidents, whether substance could be the thing itself or a quality, and so on. All is not all, even though the sentence itself makes no reference to interrogative genus or genera. I think it's, excuse me, I think it's moving within those kind of problems that have to do with revaluation of all values, but at a very deep level psychologically before knowing. So at the level of asking, at the level of what are even legal questions to ask or questions we'd be encouraged to ask that give us clues as we search for knowledge, knowing. That's the importance of art that's not art and all is not all. And pick out these philosophical operations. I said X is not X, that's almost a formula. That could be a linguistic function, which is a way to not only make new concepts, but to unify. It could also be a way to fuse apparent opposites. Friedrich Nietzsche often says, B is just a special case of A. You thought B was just so different. Like this good, actually just a subclass of what you consider evil. It stands on the same exact foundation, which is the will to power.